Greetings out there in YouTube Jazzland. How's everybody doing? I hope everybody's doing all right, even with this crazy madness we're going through in the world right now. I'm the Jazz and Blues audiophile, and I'm here to suggest some great jazz albums to listen to. And this is what I'm talking about right here in the background. I'm talking about Volume 1 and Volume 2 of Burning for Buddy, a tribute to Buddy Rich by his big band members, reunited 7 years after his departure, 1994, in New York City. So in 1994, most of the band members, a lot of the band members that played with him in the last 10 or 12 years of his life, reunited in New York City to make these two great recordings, Burning for Buddy, Volume 1 and Volume 2. Now, these recordings were produced by the great Neil Peart of Rush fame, rock and roller, and he got familiarized with the music of Buddy Rich after Buddy's passing. I think through the meeting of Kathy Rich. I'm not sure about that. I read the notes on it a long time ago. I don't remember if that's the way it happened, but I think it was through meeting Kathy Rich that he got familiarized and introduced to Buddy Rich, his work and recordings, and he got heavily involved in it, and somehow the idea spread that and came forward that they should reunite the band and that they should do a tribute recordings with guest drummers that would be invited to participate in these re-recordings of some well-known big band charts that were part of Buddy Rich's songbook over the years. So anybody who's a fan of Buddy Rich will recognize a lot of these tracks, and they have been revamped, and they're playing them in a fresh way every time, of course. And this is one of the last last occasions that you get of hearing the actual Buddy Rich band on audio CD. After that, there was a series of memorial concerts over the years. There's also a DVD that exists on the making of these recordings. So you get extensive interviews in there with Kathy Rich, with Neil Peart, and a lot of drummers that worked on the sessions that discuss how everything was made and their feelings about the music of Buddy Rich, about Buddy Rich himself and all this. So it's very interesting. You can get the DVD if you want, or I think part of it is also available for viewing on YouTube. If you do a little search on YouTube, you type the making of Burning for Buddy, you will probably find some of these videos, recordings. So anyway, this is some dynamite, terrific jazz. Why is that? Well, here, let me just read you the rundown of the different drummers, guest drummers that you will be able to hear on this album, on these two albums actually, Volume 1 and Volume 2. You've got Kenny Aronoff, Bill Bruford, Billy Cobham, Steve Ferrone, Steve Gadd, Omar Hakim, Manu Katché and Mino Sinelu, Joe Morello, Rod Morgenstein, Neil Peart, Simon Phillips, Ed Sognessy of the famed Tonight Show band back in the days with Doc Severinsen, Marvin Smitty Smith, Steve Smith, Matt Sorum, Dave Weckl. You've also got David Garibaldi and Greg Bissonette. Plus, you've got one more guy on there that shows up on Volume 1 that, in my opinion, the simple fact that this man shows up to pay a tribute to Buddy Rich is in itself a testimony to Buddy's own greatness and Buddy's own legendary status as a drummer, period. Not only a jazz drummer, but just a drummer, one of the greatest drummers that ever lived. And I'm talking about the participation of the great legendary Max Roach, which is a jazz drumming legend in himself. Max Roach, of course, is from a different school. He's from a more modern school of drumming. He's from the bebop era. He played with Dizzy Gillespie, Charlie Parker, Miles Davis, and you name it. He played with all kinds of very modern jazz musicians. Buddy is more from the swing era and the swing school of playing. But Max Roach shows up here, and he plays just a drum solo in two parts, to pay homage to the legendary Buddy Rich. He also was acquainted with Buddy, obviously, because they recorded an album back in 1959 together called Rich versus Roach, where you can hear Buddy and Max Roach having some friendly drum battles and drum duels together on this album. And this was recorded with both of their small groups at the time in 1959. They both were leading small groups, and it's a stereo recording. And on the left channel you can hear Buddy and his band, and on the right channel you hear Max Roach and his band coming through. So you can easily discern the two drummers and listen to the two drummers independently if you want to, or together. And it's a very, very good album in itself, and I highly recommend it. Also, Rich versus Roach, I think it's on Mercury Records. But anyway, Max Roach is on here and comes to pay his tribute to Buddy, and that is just in itself is quite an honor as far as I can, as far as I think anyway. Just for him to show up like that, and that puts to a lie everybody who says, "Oh no, Buddy Rich was not that much of a great drummer," blah blah blah, and this and that. I mean, look at all the names that show up here, and not only that, even outside the jazz world, because a lot of these drummers on here are completely outside the jazz world, but they still show up to pay a tribute to Buddy. And the greatest one in the jazz world to show up in here, in my opinion, is Max Roach, of course. So anyway, this recording was done, as I said, in 1994. It was recorded, let's see here, I'm going to take a look at the notes again. It was recorded in May of 1994 at the Power Station in New York City. And it was mixed, interesting thing for me here, it was mixed at Studio Morin Heights, Quebec in June of 1994. Now that's interesting for me because I'm in Quebec. This little episode is coming to you like all the other episodes from Quebec, and Morin Heights was a very, very famous recording studio in the Laurentians, not too far from Montreal. And many, many worldwide artists recorded some excellent albums at that studio. It was a legendary studio for its great acoustics. It was, well, it was worldwide, recognized worldwide. But unfortunately, it burned down to the ground a few years ago, and we've lost it now forever. But nevertheless, this album was mixed at Morin Heights Studios here in Quebec. And you'll find the mix as you listen to this that, of course, the drummers are very much forward and center to the mix. They really come out in the forefront during the whole recording here, but they don't overshadow the band. Nevertheless, the band comes out very well also. And so, but it was mixed in order to really put the drummers at the forefront throughout. And we can understand that because, of course, it's drummers coming forward to pay tribute to another drummer. But his band shines through and is very well balanced out, and it's not an easy thing for recording engineers to record a 16-man orchestra. And it's I've heard a lot of bad sounding recordings of big bands throughout the years, but this is not one of them. This one is very well mixed, comes out sounding very, very, very good, very much hi-fi, high fidelity sound reproduction, excellent reproduction on that front. So anyway, let me give you here a rundown of the tracks you'll be able to hear on these two albums. And you'll be able to, of course, you will recognize these albums if you're already a Buddy Rich, a longtime Buddy Rich fan. You'll recognize most of these tracks. They were part of the Buddy Rich books, and he performed them on and off during his live performances. He also recorded some of these previously when he was still living with his big band. But here they are, redone again with all these guest drummers. So you'll be able to hear on Volume 1, Dancing Men, Mercy, 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 Love for Sale, The Hula Witch, Nutville, Cottontail, No Jive, Milestones. Then there's the tribute by Max Roach, the drum solo tribute, which is in two parts, which is called The Drum Also Waltzes. You'll also hear Machine, Straight No Chaser, Slow Funk, Shawnee, Drumorello, Lingo, You Gotta Try, and Pick Up the Pieces. That's on Volume 1 of this great album. Volume 2, you will hear Moment's Notice, Basically Blues, Willowcrest, In a Mellow Tone, Time Check, Goodbye Yesterday, Groovin' Hard, Big Swing Face, Standing Up in a Hammock, Take the A-Train, 1 O'Clock Jump, Them Their Eyes with a vocal by Kathy Rich, and the Channel 1 Suite. Now, that was one of his show-stopping numbers with which he ended his live performances, usually, and brought down the house with an incredible, mind-boggling, mind-dazzling drum solo. But it's been reorganized here for this recording. They actually imported a drum solo from a previous recording done by Buddy Rich. So it's actually Buddy Rich you'll be hearing doing the solo during this final number on Volume 2. And you also hear words to this song because words were added to this song for the first time to pay homage and tribute to Buddy. And they are sung, of course, by his daughter, Kathy Rich, accompanied with Annie Ross, Dominic Allen, and Annette Sanders. And they sing these lyrics to the Channel 1 Suite. So, all in all, two excellent big band recordings. These guys are cooking. They are playing some hard-driving, hard-swinging, modern big band jazz. So if you're looking for two great albums of hard-driving, hard-swinging, modern big band jazz, this is not stuff from the past. They were not looking back. Buddy used to say all during his career that he was not a band, his big band was not a band about nostalgia. He wasn't playing stuff from the swing era. He wasn't playing stuff from yesterday. He says, we're playing stuff for today and even for tomorrow. And I think he really did a good job in that area. He fulfilled his desire perfectly because they are definitely playing, even when you listen to them on these recordings don't seem to have aged that much. They're still very much fresh sounding and modern sounding, even listening to these recordings years later. And this was recorded, of course, in 1994, but the recordings, the arrangement themselves date back from the 80s and the 70s, and even some of them from the 60s, while Buddy was still living and leading his orchestra. So, and they haven't aged that much. They really sound really good and really modern and still very, very much challenging and rewarding to listen to today if you're into music, jazz music that sounds like today and not like yesterday. So, again, this has been my recommendation for this program. And I'll tell you something. If you're looking for some good jazz to listen to, you're on the right channel. Go ahead and subscribe. I never recommend crap. You'll never get me recommending crummy recordings and crummy jazz. That's not my beat. And there is bad jazz out there. I've heard it. So not all jazz is good. I agree. And that's why people get a bad opinion about jazz. They hear some crummy jazz players, and they hear some crummy jazz music, and they think that all jazz music is the same. Not true. There is some bad jazz, but there is an awful lot of very, very good and excellent jazz out there, and that's all I'll ever recommend. So, listen to these guys cook. These guys are cooking. They are blowing up a storm. You want to hear some good stuff? These are two excellent albums. Again, recorded in 1984, but released a couple of years apart. Volume 1 came out in 1994, and Volume 2 came out in 1997. They were released here in Toronto on the Anthem record company. Released these. I don't know if in the United States it would be the same record company, but in Canada it was Anthem Records. And they are still available on the internet. I checked, so you can order them on the internet, and you can probably buy them as digital downloads also, if you're into that kind of stuff. So, as I said, and as I always say while closing my little episodes like this, looking for some great jazz, go ahead and subscribe to my channel. I always recommend some excellent stuff. Go ahead and comment below if you agree that this is some great big band jazz recordings or whatever. And until next time, until the next episode, remember what I always say. No matter what's happening in the world right now, no matter how crazy the world is going, jazz on. Talk to you next time.